Welcome, everybody, to another edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and as you can see, I'm in my brick office here at 1925 Giants Drive, Shadow MetLife Stadium. This is kind of our sandwich show again. We have a post-game from Monday night in Pittsburgh. Obviously, not the result the Giants were hoping for. Put out I'd say, decent performance, end up losing. But the reality is, as we all know, Bill Parcells, that old line, you are what your record says you are, and the Giants are 2-6. Again, doesn't matter the regime, they're now sitting at 2-6. So sometimes I look at it, and I don't know how you Giants fans do it. Put down your hard-earned money to come to the stadium every week, to go on the road and watch this team. It's a big commitment. So I understand the frustration. I understand the emotions involved. That was in the past. Now we look forward. We also have Sunday at home, the Washington Commanders. Everybody remembers week 2, losing that game despite not giving up a touchdown and scoring 3 touchdowns themselves and still losing to Washington. Now Washington sits atop the NFC East, and the New York Giants are in the basement. So, what's today's show all about? Well, I teased it on social media. This is my Festivus episode. I know Festivus is not until December, but it's time for some airing of grievances. Not with anyone specific, but it can really drive you crazy sometimes to see all of the different perspectives about the New York Giants. And having done this pretty much for the last decade and a half, I have a pretty good sense. It's why you listen to this show. That's why you watch this show. It's why you follow me on social media, and you follow me in NorthJersey.com and in the print editions of The Record. You either like my coverage and like what I have to say, appreciate my opinion, like to disagree with what I say and how I feel about certain topics with the New York Giants. But above all, I don't think you'd be listening to the show if you didn't respect what I had to say. And sometimes respect has to be a two-way street. And I think right now with the New York Giants, with where things are, I think we need a reset. I think we need to grab the pole out of the closet. I'll play the role of Frank Costanza, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, how could you not watch Seinfeld? How could you not know what Festivus is? But it was the made-up holiday that George Costanza and his family had. It was about the airing of grievances. Usually takes place in other holidays as well in certain families, but for them it's Festivus. It's the airing of grievances. So what does that mean for me and my coverage and the Giants? Well, I've got some topics I want to hit. I want to give you my opinion. I want to take some opinions to task. And I think that'll set the stage not only for what happened in Pittsburgh for the Giants, but also what's moving forward. So let's go. The airing of grievances. First off the list, the Evan Neal situation. I've got some things to say, how I feel about the situation, how the Giants have handled it, and kind of the flip-flopping that has gone on not only in the media, but in the fan base and the perspective as to why is Evan Neal not playing. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Evan Neal is not playing because we've watched Evan Neal the last 2 years. You know why Evan Neal's not playing. He hasn't proven yet that he's an improved player. He was coming off of ankle surgery. They had hoped that an entire offseason with the new coaching staff, he would get healthy and be able to solidify himself at that right tackle spot. He wasn't healthy enough to get on the field in training camp. He was still recovering from his surgery. That's why Jermaine Illuminor ended up at right tackle. That's why Evan Neal started camp on the physically unable to perform list. He wasn't healthy. He did not participate in camp. So now you're talking about coming into the season. We've talked about this in years past. Practice in the regular season in the NFL is not what most people think it is. It is the offense, first team offense going against the scout team defense, mostly made up of practice squad players playing out of position. I remember talking to Matt Sims, son of Phil Sims, former Don Bosco star, is now on Sirius XM NFL radio. I remember talking to Matt at the Super Bowl when he was with the Falcons. Yes, the 28-3 game. And Matt Sims was on the practice squad. He was the third quarterback. Matt Sims was not pretending to be Tom Brady on the practice squad as they prepared for that Super Bowl. Matt Sims was playing safety and corner and giving good looks to Julio Jones in that game, in that week of practice. It's a misconception in the NFL of what practice actually is like. So when Evan Neal missed that target date in the summer, to be able to show and start working back into what the type of player they hoped he could become, he's behind the eight ball already. And this isn't a team right now that is looking to the future immediately. They've shown you that. They need to win games. They need to compete. Yes, you're going to look at me and go, well, Art, they're 2-6. Yes, they're 2-6, but they've been competitive in all but 2 games this year. They weren't competitive in week 1 against Minnesota in the second half, and the Eagles game got away from them. And they basically put up the white flag in the fourth quarter. Daniel Jones to the bench, Drew Lock came in, and the Eagles kind of laid back too. Saquon came out. We saw the shot on the sideline, Saquon and Sirianni. Does he want to go for his career yards? He didn't. He said play the younger guys, and that's the way it happened. But they've been competitive in every one of the games. Yes, competitive isn't good enough. They need to win football games. But again, we get into this week. Andrew Thomas is hurt. They played Joshua Zudu. Josh Zudu was in training camp. He spent the entire training camp as the swing tackle. So he got the first shot when Andrew Thomas went out for the season after Liz Frank's surgery. Evan Neal is working his way into the lineup. But as far as they're concerned, and I'm not sure why anyone else thinks this, Evan Neal has had no opportunities to show that he is a better football player than the one that finished last season. So why are we surprised that the Giants are looking for veteran options to make sure that Evan Neal is not exposed and put in a situation that he's not ready to handle? I understand. You want to see Evan Neal. You want to see Evan Neal an improved player. Wouldn't you think that a front office that selected Evan Neal 7th overall, a coaching staff that for the last 2 years has put up with Evan Neal and his lackluster play at times, his inconsistency, his injuries, don't you think that if Evan Neal was ready, or anyone thought that Evan Neal was ready to be a more improved player, that they wouldn't go out and sign Chris Hubbard and put him at left tackle and say, you know what, we're going to give him a shot over Josh Zudu? 58 games started in the NFL for Chris Hubbard. So don't tell me that the Giants are making a mistake by playing Hubbard over Zudu. Yes, I know. Hubbard was exposed a little bit in pass protection. The Giants were going to be exposed in pass protection regardless of who they played at left tackle without Andrew Thomas this past weekend in Pittsburgh. Guess what? Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt exposed the best tackles in the league. The best. Now you're telling me that you're going to criticize Brian Dable and Joe Shane and this coaching staff for not playing Josh Zudu and then use that as a mark against them and say they're not developing players. You can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. As fans, you can have it both ways. But if you're truly analyzing the situation the way it is, there is no way you can look with an honest appraisal of what's going on and say the Giants are missing the boat on Evan Neal. They've already missed the boat on Evan Neal. You're not going to salvage the 7th overall pick by getting him out there at left tackle against Alex Highsmith in a pressurized situation in Pittsburgh and say, well, we just think Neal is going to flip a switch. He played left tackle in college. Let's just play him there. Are we hearing this? I mean, come on, people. Evan Neal, his career is not over. To this point, he's a bust. But spend some time, talk to Jermaine Illuminor and what it's like for a young offensive lineman in this league. This isn't an excuse. Evan Neal might never play another important down in this NFL. He might not be a solid NFL player, let alone the above-average starter that he was drafted to be. That's a mark against Joe Schoen and the coaching staff. Both ways. There's no escaping that. But because you didn't play Evan Neal in that situation and put him in a situation he clearly is not ready for, you're now going to say, well, they're really blowing it. They're compounding a problem. How is that possible? You're making it worse if you put Evan Neal and compromise the football. You've already hurt your scouting department. You've already hurt your draft record by what he's done and having been injured. It goes for Josh Azudu and Marcus McKeithen, who's not even on the team. Those 3 offensive linemen that Joe Schoen and the scouting department drafted in 2022, there are already marks against them. They're not fireable offenses, but they're players that didn't hit. They didn't hit. Could they become better players if Evan Neal gets a full season with Carm Brazillo and James Ferentz and gets on the field and is able to work through practice and grind in the spring and then get out here in training camp? And maybe you move him to guard. Maybe you keep him at tackle. But right now, here's where I know some of you are going to roll your eyes. I give the Giants credit for doing what they're doing. They're not forcing the draft picks out there. They're not saying, you know what, we got to save face. We got to get Evan Neal on the field. We got to get Josh Rizzuto on the field. They're not doing that. Why didn't they sign a tackle in the offseason? I've seen that. Why didn't they sign? Because they hoped that Josh Rizzuto and Evan Neal would be that guy. But when they realized that Evan Neal was not going to be on the field in training camp, when his ankle did not come back to where it needed to be, they weren't just going to sit around and say, well, we'll wait for Evan Neal. That was last year's mistake. And at that point in time, there weren't offensive linemen that were on the market that you'd say, got to bring him in. Tyree Phillips, yes, Giants would have brought him in. He's still not healthy. He's still working back from the torn quad from last year. DJ Humphries they brought in for a visit last week. It was a medical check. The guy had tore his ACL last year. He's still not ready physically. So it doesn't matter when you get those players. You're not counting on Andrew Thomas. You're not counting on Andrew Thomas to get hurt and have to get Lisfranc surgery. If this was a one-game scenario, then you handle it. You put Josh Rizzuto in the game and you do what you can. It didn't work. So you move to the next week. I tell you what, those of you who are still complaining about Chris Hubbard in Pass Pro because Pro Football Focus said he was the 67th out of 67 graded offensive tackles on the field last week in the league. Did you watch him in the run game? Much better than what the Giants had with Josh Rizzuto at tackle in the run game. Much better. Is it perfect? No. Does Joe Schoen save face because he was able to go out and sign Chris Hubbard from the 49ers practice squad? No, not at all. But this team is 2-6. They've got to do what they can to get to 3-6 for next week. It's about trying to win games. I won't even get into the tanking scenario because we just don't know what the draft is going to look like right now. So that is my 15-minute rant on Evan Neal, the airing of grievances. The same people, fans, media, who want to hold Joe Schoen accountable for the draft bust that is Evan Neal, now want to hold Brian Daboll accountable for not playing Evan Neal. What are we doing? What are we doing? We are not being consistent. And I think that's the one thing you can trust from me. Everybody is welcome to change their mind. You could change your mind and come up with a different opinion. But I am going to stay consistent. I am not playing to an agenda. I've been accused of agendas, and that's fine. Somewhere along the line, everybody has an agenda for a reason or another. This isn't agenda reporting. I'm not reporting a certain thing because I hope to get a job in the Giants front office. Or I hope that Bill Belichick gets the job and he's my buddy. So if I badmouth the front office for the Giants, then maybe if Belichick gets here, he'll give me a job and I'll be back into an NFL front office and work for it. Yeah, that's happening. Badmouthing Joe Schoen. You've got people who don't like Joe Schoen and don't like Brian Daboll, and that's fine. Their track record is what their track record is. But we're constantly moving the goalposts in the NFL. We don't know what is the proper timeline. What's the proper timeline to dig out of the mess that Dave Gettleman created here? 2 different coaching regimes. The Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1969. That is 1 year before the NFL merger with the AFL. 3. The Giants have had 4 head coaches, 5 if you include Steve Spagnuolo for his 4-game interim stint in 2017, since Tom Coughlin left after the 2015 season. Now you want to talk about continuity and change, and this isn't working. You got to give people some time here. I'm not saying do it blindly. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have not been perfect. They've made mistakes, and you want to stay on them, and you need to stay on them, the decisions that they make. Yes, they made a mistake in the end of 2022 after making the playoffs, a miscalculation of where their plan was. I think the Minnesota Vikings are doing a little bit of that now, where they are, where they assume that they are. And now you've got, they trade for a left tackle in Cam Robinson, the Vikings do. Where are the Vikings going to be next year and the year after? The Giants learned that the hard way. But in the NFL, you're trying to strike while the iron's hot. You don't want to look at it and say, well, we're on our run to the playoffs. We made the playoffs last year, but we know where we're at. If you're not in the organization, you can have that take. And I know some of you had that approach. And I give you credit for it. I give you credit for that forward thinking. Realizing where you're at. Don't overcommit. Stay the course. Keep rebuilding. Play younger players. Don't waste contracts on veterans that aren't going to be here in 2 to 3 years. The Giants haven't done that this year. Bringing in Chris Hubbard is not a veteran that is going to blow up your salary cap. You're trying to find a better player than what you have on the roster right now to stabilize. And I think that's what they've done. Is it perfect? Does it mean that Hubbard starts the rest of the season? No. And if it gets to December, maybe Evan Neal does get out there. Maybe they do start seeing things in practice, that Evan Neal is doing okay, that to say, you know what, it's worth the risk right now. But it's not right now. So those are my grievances as far as the Evan Neal situation goes. All right, let's get to Azeez Ojulari, Darius Slayton. Trade deadline. Tuesday, Election Day, is the trade deadline in the NFL. What are we going to do? How are we going to approach it? That's what the Giants fans keep asking me. How are the Giants going to approach the trade deadline? Here's what I think. I don't believe the Giants should trade Darius Slayton or Azeez Ojulari unless they're blown away. But I'm not dealing either one of these guys who have had roles right now and may continue to have roles on this team for a 6th-round pick. I don't see a 6th-round pick as something that's going to help me package draft picks and move up to get the quarterback I want next year. A 5th and a 6th is not getting that done. Let's be honest with ourselves. So I would much rather, if I'm Joe Shane, I go to Azeez Ojulari's representatives. I go to Darius Slayton's representatives. And I say, look, do you guys have any interest in signing an extension? Let's get you a little bit extra money now over the next couple of years and stay here. Be a part of this team. I float that idea out there. I know a lot of you have said to me when I put that out on social media, why would you re-sign Slayton as a receiver? You already have neighbors. Just go draft somebody. The Giants expected Jalen Hyatt to be playing right now and to beat out Darius Slayton. He hasn't been consistent enough. And now Darius Slayton is. So Darius Slayton's a better player than Jalen Hyatt. I don't know if Darius Slayton will always be a better player than Jalen Hyatt, but that's the situation. And I give the Giants credit for playing Darius Slayton. He's the better player. Now, do you want to freeze out Jalen Hyatt? No. You obviously still believe in Jalen Hyatt's talent, and he could still be a presence on this team. But you have to deal with the moment as it is. And right now, Darius Slayton is the 2nd most reliable receiver you have. Maybe the most reliable, given Malik Neighbors' concussion and that he was out for 2 weeks, and he's kind of come back here, and they're still looking to kind of increase his role comparatively to what he was early on in the year. Azeez Ojulari, 6 sacks. Tremendous. He's been great as a pass rusher. He's stayed healthy. Kayvon Thibodeau's coming back. I'm not looking to set up a huge contract for Azeez Ojulari, but if I can go to Aziz's people and I could point out his injury history and look at where he's at and try to project a market and say, you know what? We want 3 pass rushers. We want Azeez here. We want Kayvon here. We want Burns here. You're still only 24 years old. Sign here for 3 years. Let us get you a contract. It's going to get you more than you're making right now on your rookie deal. But your injury history, let's give you some incentives. Let's keep you here. You can't win in this league with just 2 pass rushers on the edge. That's where I'm thinking. I am not selling off pieces for day 3 picks. Look what Josh Uche got in a pick with the Patriots the other day. A day 3 pick. I would much rather keep those guys here to have a chance that maybe they re-sign and I can keep them here. And then I worry about a comp pick afterwards. I'm not worried about that draft pick. I know it's easy to look at that. But if you're slamming the team for not hitting draft picks, well, then all you want is draft picks. This isn't fantasy football. I get the theory. I love fantasy football. I have the most roster transactions in our league, 16 teams. I have the most because I'm constantly picking up and dropping guys hoping that I could find that lottery ticket. Didn't help that I drafted Christian McCaffrey 1st overall, and he hasn't played a game for my team this year yet. But battled back. We're at 4-4. We still got an opportunity. So I digress. Nobody wants to hear about my fantasy team. But that's where I stand with Azeez and Slayton. Daniel Jones. Troy Aikman said it on the broadcast, and it's true. Anticipation is a big problem for Daniel Jones. He doesn't anticipate plays. I don't know if he doesn't trust them. I don't know if he just sees it too much, doesn't pull the trigger. That play to Darius Slayton the other night, that's a hole shot. You pull the trigger expecting him to be there. And when he didn't, he almost got Darius Slayton put in traction. Didn't happen. Daniel Jones is the best quarterback to start for this team right now. Should he be benched? I don't think he was benched 2 weeks ago. Again, I've told you that I think it's been called benching. It was not benching. 11 minutes to go in the game. You're down 21, 28-3 to the Eagles. You're just, like Brian Daboll, trying to find a spark. You're not going to say, I wanted to put Daniel on the sideline, let him clear his head. Maybe you piss him off a little bit. Maybe a pissed off Daniel Jones is good for you right now. But it's not a referendum about where Daniel Jones is for next year. I understand that there is the injury clause. And yes, it is at the front of my mind, of people's minds. You don't want to see him get hurt, and then he can't pass a physical the 5th day of the league year in 2025, and now you're on a hook for a big number cap-wise, and you're looking to move beyond Daniel Jones. You can't play all these different ways. Daniel Jones needs to play better, and that's the reality. I don't think if you bring in Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito right now, you're getting a better product. You just have to wait and see. So that's where I'm at with Daniel Jones. I mentioned the draft picks. Oh, and let's end the show on this one, okay? Before we start talking about the weekend show. And the more I talk about this, the more I think maybe we should do a preview show separately from this Airing of Grievances show. Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy is why Joe Schoen did not want to pay Saquon Barkley. Period. Not because he had Tyrone Tracy. The thought process, again, if we want to reevaluate and relitigate the situation, a week after Saquon ran all over the Giants, everybody laughed at the Giants. Oh, they should have kept Saquon. How do you let your best players? Joe Schoen has been proven right from that aspect of roster building. We can find a running back that can do the job elsewhere. He might not be Saquon, but we can find a guy. They drafted Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round. 5th round. I understand Tyrone Tracy has only started a handful of games. But when you watch Tyrone Tracy play, it's got to get you really excited if you're a Giants fan. And I know he's in the concussion protocol. The hope is that he can be on the field as a non-contact participant. We'll have to wait and see. Practices later today because of the Monday Night Football. So I wanted to get this show up. And I think that's what we'll end up doing. If our producer Paul Wood is good with it, maybe either tomorrow or Friday we will do a preview show for the weekend rather than kind of wrap everything up in here. But Tyrone Tracy here. Notice nobody is talking about the salary for Tyrone Tracy. And if Tyrone Tracy becomes a star running back for the Giants, what that will allow them to do elsewhere in theory, as opposed to paying $13 million for a running back. That is the reality of the situation. Saquon is a good player. Saquon is having a great season so far for the Eagles. Does it make the Giants look bad? Yes. It makes them look like they let a good player go. But there are reasons for that. And my problem is with the people who ignore those reasons. You could disagree with it. You could say, I don't think what's been said about running backs is accurate. Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You're entitled to build your team a different way. But when former GMs go on podcasts and talk about how Joe Schoen is an idiot and an imbecile and allows Saquon Barkley to leave, it's convenient that it's after Saquon Barkley rushes for what he did against the Giants. And you don't hear a peep this week about Tyrone Tracy and how well he performed last week. And why, if Tyrone Tracy becomes a lead running back for this team, what the Giants might be able to do in other positions. This is not a complete team. It might not ever become a complete team. Despite John Mara's vote of confidence, if things go bad, we don't know if Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll will be beyond 2025 or even be here in 2025. There's a lot of season left. Do I believe they'll be here? Yes. Do I believe they're building something? Yes. Have I seen tangible results, more tangible results than any of the three regimes that were here previously? Head coaching regimes? Yes. I see this offense. I see the game planning. I see the schematic changes. They're doing good things. But they're a young football team, and they're making a lot of stupid mistakes. It wasn't long ago that the Detroit Lions were a young football team that were making a lot of stupid mistakes. They were. And people were questioning whether the front office in Detroit and Dan Campbell knew what they were doing. And lo and behold, Detroit is now the best team in the NFC. And other than the two-time defending Super Bowl champions, they're a team that I think everyone would pick right now and say, you got a favorite for the Super Bowl? Detroit's right up there, even with losing Aiden Hutchinson. So you got to see how this comes about, how this comes together. So that's my airing of grievances today. Maybe we make this a regular segment if people enjoy it enough. But that's where I feel right. That's how I feel right now. Evan Neal, why isn't he playing? You know why he's not playing. You watched him play. You watched him play. If they thought he could play better, don't you think Brian Dable and Joe Shane would put him on the field? It'd make them look better if he looks better. Right now, all he has is the body of work that he's put out there. And that makes Joe Shane look bad. So if they thought Evan Neal could play, you think Joe Shane's going to go get Chris Hubbard to play? I mean, let's be honest here. If they were being selfish, they would play Evan Neal. Just to be able to say, look, we're giving him chances. We're giving him chances. We're giving him chances. What's done behind the scenes either helps or hurts a team internally, but does not help them publicly. What you don't see, you don't know. And that goes for me, and that goes for you in the audience. So I believe Paul Wood, my producer, says he's all in for another show. So we will do a preview show, Giants-Washington, with a better sense of injuries and everything else. Let's aim for tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it'll be Friday. We'll do that show. So we'll give you 2 episodes this week, plus Sunday, the post-game podcast from MetLife and where the Giants are at. And the final question, Paul Wood wanted to know what the name of my fantasy team is. It is Run CMC. So it's Run DMC, but for Christian McCaffrey. 2 years ago, I won my first and only fantasy football Super Bowl with Christian McCaffrey on the team. I drafted him again this year, and I guess I got that Super Bowl hangover 2 years later. But I'm battling back 4-4, and we'll see. We'll see how things go. So, I did pick up Tyrone Tracy several weeks back. So he certainly helped me on Monday night. But that's where we're at. So I hope you enjoyed the Festivus episode. And I think we are going to do an airing of grievances segment every week because I need to get that emotion out a little bit. Gotta, I can't be in a bar with people who want to accuse me and criticize my coverage and answer back the way I like to answer back. If I was with my buddies at the bar, you'd be hearing a lot more than what you get on social media or what you get on All In. So, I'm not going to be like the Yankees, during some Yankee fans at the stadium between what they did to Mookie Betts. How do you pry the mid open? I got no problem going for the ball, but come on, Steve Bartman. Then you take it to another level. You're trying to. What do you think you're accomplishing? Prying open Mookie Betts' glove. But I have a feeling he drank for free last night. That's for sure. In anywhere he went in the Bronx. And then the other Yankee fan, during the moment of silence for the cancer survivors and Stand Up for Cancer, going after Freddie Freeman. Come on, guys. Come on. Got to be better than that. Have some fun, but we've all been there. But let's pull it together a little bit. So, but who am I to police fans? Because that's another Airing of Grievances episode down the line. But so for Paul Wood, I will say happy Halloween to everyone. Props to Paul for the icebox costume for Halloween for his daughter Emma. Tremendous. Maybe we'll pop up a photo if Paul has the costume together. I think you Giants fans would enjoy it. So, Paul's a man of many hats. Giants season ticket holder, tailgate genius, podcast producer, great dad, and costume creator. Who would have known? But anyway, thanks for being all in. Have a happy Halloween. Go Yankees. Send the Dodgers and yourselves back to LA with the World Series trophy. See if you can get another one tonight. See if Garrett Cole can come up and step up for this team. So appreciate you being all in. That's all in for today in our Festivus episode. And as Frank Costanza would say, I got a lot of problems with you people, and you're going to hear about it. I'm Art Stapleton. We'll catch you next week.